I begin to wonder, like, what alternative history do they envision might have happened? I mean, it is to me a fascinating question why, and it's probably never going to be resolved, but why certain human beings in certain parts of the world decided to get up out of their chairs and go around the world and see the rest of the world, see what they had, see what was in store for them, see what they could get. The vast majority of humans did not do that. There is something deeply conservative about this, it seems to me, because it's like you should sit still and you should cultivate your own place and you should learn how to like your home. And you don't have to go abroad. This whole people that are trying to stir shit up are just going to create problems. And to some extent, obviously that's true, is it not? I mean, just take biology. The fact that Europeans went to America meant essentially a biological catastrophe. You had a viral outbreak which has killed so many more people than actual human beings killing them. Yeah. So can we not say that was a mistake? Can we not look back and say, well, that was an awful thing to happen. If the English had just stayed home, if these religious nutcases had been able to be contained within their own country, all this wouldn't have happened. Why? What would you say to that sort of romantic? It's a romantic idea.
It is, and it's in a strange way, although people who use the language of settler colonialism will always describe themselves as progressive, in a way it's not at all a progressive way of thinking, because it instead of saying we want to move forward, it's really saying we want to move backward. We want
it's
to sort
purely reactionary.
Yes.
It's deeply reactionary.
Yeah, and it rests on a sort of ideal of authenticity and of local roots that usually in the past had been thought of as a right-wing idea rather than a progressive idea. So I think, in the case of the European discovery of America, I think you could probably say it was inevitable. It was inevitable that at some point, once the technology...
Why was it inevitable?
Because we all live on the same planet, and eventually someone would develop the ability to cross an ocean in a ship.
But why would they choose to do so? That's the really interesting question. Lots of people have technology, but not many people, apart from the Anglo-Saxons and the Northern Europeans, really were interested in taking that across the entire globe.
Well, I think that the reason was probably the same reason as all kinds of exploration, which was desire for gain, desire for profit. The same reason that you had the Silk Road and you had, Marco Polo went to China in the Middle Ages, and there had been Viking settlements in Newfoundland and Greenland. And I think, and of course, when Columbus discovered America, that's not what he was setting out to do at all. He was setting out to try to find a trade route to China and to India, where he thought, we would get around the Portuguese monopoly on trade to India and make a lot of money. So I think that the desire for personal gain is always sort of the main driver in history.
It was greed. It was, and the desire for more power, more money, more wealth. You could use that wealth to help yourself at the price of your rivals in your home country. Incredibly important for governments, like the kings and queens of the 16th and 17th centuries were like, well, we better get in on this. And when one started, the others joined in for fear of being left behind in this project. And it just seems to me that if that was inevitable to some extent, I don't think it's necessarily that inevitable, because I think you have to have a culture that wants to move forward, that wants to change, that wants to gain. Not all cultures are like that. Most cultures have not been like that. They've been very stable and stayed similar. And so there's something in the Western mind that definitely is unique about this, it seems to me.
I think that we're getting to one of the really central points in all this, which is that it's about a reevaluation of Western culture, Western civilization, in a way that turns the things that in the 19th century or early 20th century Europeans and Americans bragged about and thought of as the best things about their civilization have sort of been inverted to become the worst things. And that's not without reason. It's not sheer perversity. It's because the history of the 20th century taught the West, taught Europe and America, that it was capable of the worst violence, the worst savagery and barbarism, far more destructive than the people who they considered savages and barbarians. And I think that has made people over generations think about history in a different way, think about the history of the United States in a different way. If you look at the way early 19th century patriotic historians thought about America, it was very teleological. It was sort of everything is leading to the discovery of America because we're the homeland of liberty. We're the sort of, as Abraham Lincoln said, we're the test of self-government. If we can't make liberty work, then no one can. And the only way to see the history of America in that way was basically to turn a blind eye to slavery and to turn a blind eye to the conquest of natives. So it meant leaving a lot out. And now there's attempts to not leave things out and to try to reckon with those things. And it's a very difficult, I think, moral and intellectual task. And I think that there is a tendency it's easier to go to the opposite extreme and to sort of turn one myth into what I call in the book a counter myth about American history, which is rather than being a great hero, Columbus was a sort of uniquely horrible villain. And rather than advancing the cause of humanity, the creation of America was a great blow to humanity and put us down this wrong path that we can't recover from. But
it's also true, of course, that most of the inhabitants of North America when Columbus arrived were settler colonialists, in as much as they had come over the Bering Strait. They had come and found this land, killed anybody that was there already, and occupied it.